Well, hello everybody. Great to have you on my YouTube channel. This is video 2 of a 3-part video series where I'm making a decision to choose an amp pedal for my pedal board on electric violin. My main focus today will be to narrow these 3 pedals down to the one that I plan to use in my signal chain moving forward. So I invite you in to my train of thought and my findings as I go. Again, the 3 pedals that I'm shooting out are the Strymon IRIDIUM, and it's an amp and IR cab pedal. And then we have the Universal Audio Dream 65 reverb amp pedal. That's based on the Fender Deluxe Reverb. And then we have the Ruby, the Universal Audio Ruby 63 top boost amp. And it's a pedal based on the famous Vox AC30 that was used by all the British bands in the 60s. So if you want to see me get into the guts of these pedals a bit and show more of what they do and how they sound with the electric violin, I encourage you to watch video 1 first before you watch this one, just to get a bit more of an idea of what these pedals do. And you'll see a link to that at the top right of my screen. So let me invite you in on my train of thought, on the journey that I've been on when it comes to the last few years of exploring drive pedals. I've been on a journey, a bit of an adventure, and I've been watching other electric violinists who are using overdrive, distortion, and fuzz. And I already touched on this in video number 1, but guitar effect pedals were all meant to be run through guitar amps, and were also designed for guitars with magnetic pickups. And so guitar pedals work very differently on the electric violin. They sound different depending on the pickup you use. And so I've been on a journey to try to get the best quality tone out of my drive pedals. So when electric violinists, especially with piezo pickups, and that's what the Ned Steinberger has, if they just randomly plug in their electric violin into a distortion pedal and just rock it out, the quality of tone, honestly, can be thin, compressed, squished, and quite harsh, actually. And I honestly have not heard many players that have the kind of rich, fat tone that I'm looking for. You know, a tone that you can hear everywhere, close to the amazing drive tones that guitarists are getting. I haven't heard that same just quality drive tone from electric violinists, if I'm honest with you. And so I'm on a bit of a journey to get the best tone that I can from any electric violin, whether it be a piezo electric, or in the case of this electric violin, my Cantini, it has a magnetic pickup. So I want both to respond in a way that is best for me and for the tone that I'm just kind of searching for when it comes to drive. Very happy with my non-drive tone, but my driven tone, I'm continuing to experiment to see what's going to work best. So why is it that guitarists are getting a much better tone than a lot of electric violinists are? And I think that there's a lot of factors at play. There's the pickup, like I mentioned, the strings, the higher pitch of the violin, and the guitar is a lower instrument, the signal chain, could be the preamp or a lack of preamp in your violin. That might make a difference. But the more I've thought about this, the more I feel that there is one key factor that many players are missing. Drive pedals, overdrive, distortion, and fuzz, were meant to work in conjunction and interact with a guitar amp, preferably a tube amp. And I brought this up in the first video, and that's why I've decided to go on this bit of an adventure with, basically, these are amp pedals. These are amps in a box. So drive pedals will drive an amp a little harder and cause it to break up, which results in some really fantastic rich tones. Now, I gotta say, I have a confession to make to the whole YouTube community out there. I'm just not an amp guy. I've never owned a tube amp in my life. But I have used what I would call amp modeling. Amp modeling in an old Roland multi-effects pedal that I had back a couple albums ago. And I've tracked some violin distortion parts through a guitar tube amp in some early recordings in a studio where they happened to have a nice tube amp, and I just plugged my violin through my pedal board into that amp and got a really fantastic driven tone. And so this early experimentation was fantastic, and it actually sounded really good. But honestly, I didn't really understand until now the important relationship between guitar amps and drive pedals. You see, there's a really cool thing that happens when you run a drive pedal into an amp. It's a beautiful interplay or a marriage of drive and tone that is really special. So this is why I've decided to explore these 3 amp pedals: the Iridium, the Dream, and the Ruby. I really want to see how they interact with my pedal board, my signal chain, and the drive pedals that I'm using. I've even brought an extra pedal that I use sometimes, a fuzz face, which is really awesome. We'll try that out, maybe in the signal chain in a second. But first of all, I really want to just set these up. I've got them set up with the kind of closest tone that I could find. And I've done a lot of research into this. Again, there's nobody doing this that I know of right now in the electric violin world, unless it's some of the players that are going into amps, and they've been doing that all along, and there's a number of you out there, and it's fantastic what you're doing. But from the research I have done, most guitarists who use tube amps keep the amp in a fairly clean setting or on the edge of breakup. And so the amp is set up in such a way that there's a lot of headroom. So as they dig in or add volume to the amp from their guitar, the tubes work a little harder and they start to break up. This creates a lot of dynamic range in their playing and in their amp, and greater flexibility around adding external drive or boost pedals. And so when you have a clean amp, when you turn on a boost pedal, it will, let's just try that right now. So here's a clean amp sound. We'll start with the Iridium. Clean sound, and then we're going to add the drive. You can see it drove the Iridium a little bit and broke it up. If we add distortion to that, it's going to... And so that's kind of what my focus is going to be. I'm going to set each of these up in such a way that they are all clean amps on the edge of breakup, just like most guitarists do. And my focus will be, and my goal for this video, is to find the best clean pre-breakup setting in the Iridium, the Dream, and the Ruby. And then compare the tone, the feel, the flexibility of each amp pedal to see which one that I'm drawn to the most. So here goes. Let's start this bit of an adventure here. Hope you can see these okay, clearly. Got 2 videos running here, so you should be able to see this in the second video. So a little bit on my signal chain here. I've spent some time on each of these pedals already, and I've actually wired them all together in series, in stereo. So we have our input into the Iridium, but then we have a stereo out of the Iridium into the stereo in on the Dream, and the stereo out of the Dream into the stereo in of the Ruby, and the stereo out of the Ruby into my digital delay, which goes through the rest of my board. Modulation, reverb. And these amps are after my drives before the delay. And so that's the best place to put them in your signal chain to get the best sound. If I was to put the amps at the end, you would be getting delay and reverb into the amp, and it's not going to respond in the same way as putting it in the signal chain right after the drive pedals, the distortion, fuzz, whatever you have. I'm going to leave my pedal board on. And again, my pedal board, my typical sound is I've got a tiny little bit of compression happening on my diamond compressor. And I have a little bit of analog delay with my Nemesis delay, a tiny bit of Hall reverb in my Eventide space reverb, no modulation, and we're just keeping it very simple. And this is my typical sound with no amp on at all, well, no amp pedal. So what we're going to do is just walk through each of these and just see what they sound like on both my Ned Steimerger with the piezo electric pickup and then also my Cantini with the magnetic pickup. So here's the Iridium, and this is the first setting. And then this is... I think that's really got only one main setting when I push it on. So here's the Iridium. Here's the first setting of the Dream. I actually got two settings with the Dream because you could import one with an app and then also have a second setting that you set up on the pedal on its own. So I'm using two. And again, I was just looking for the most natural sound on each of these to be as close to my affected pedal board sound as possible. It's the first setting of the Dream. Without, with. And the second setting, which is less bright. Second setting. And then the Ruby. I was able to get two settings as well. Here's the first one. Without. Ruby, first setting. Second setting. Dream, first setting. Dream, second setting. Iridium just has one setting. If I wanted a second setting, I could just go to the Vox style amp. Let's do that from now on. So here's the round and the Vox. There we go. So those are the pedals, just simple, without any overdrive. And now let's do that again with the Cantini, because it has a magnetic pickup, and it's going to respond a little bit differently to each of these amps. So here's the Iridium on the Cantini with the magnetic bridge, and this is the Fender setting. And here's the Vox setting. I'm sure you could EQ that a little bit, that Vox setting, if you find that a bit bright. Here's the Dream, the first setting I was able to pull up. Second setting, which is a bit warmer. Ruby, first setting. Second setting. And without. So now what I'd like to do is I like to now test these pedals, these amp pedals, with distortion, with overdrive, with fuzz. I actually have my fuzz face right here, and I also have an Amex R Bass Fuzz Deluxe, but I'm going to focus on the fuzz face today. It's quite a warm, nice, authentic fuzz sound. Used a lot, you know, by Jimi Hendrix and others. And we'll kind of add that to the mix and see how it affects these pedals. So what I want to do for this portion of the demo is we're going to stay on my NS for most of this part. I really believe that if we can get these amp pedals working the way I hope they will, they're going to make piezoelectric pickups sound great as well, not just magnetic. And then we'll go to the CANTINI and just see how that compares. And so here is my drive sound on the NS. This is a Sparkle drive with a mixture of clean and driven signal. Pitchfork in there. And let's just see how this sounds through each of these pedals, starting with the Iridium in each setting. So we'll keep that on, and this is the Fender round setting. The chime setting, which is the Vox. Okay, here's the Dream. That was the first setting. This is a bit warmer, this one. And here's the Ruby first setting. Yeah, it's a very different tone, quite bright. That's got some low mid, more low mids in it, that second setting. Okay, and those are what they sound like with drive. Let's try them again with distortion. So the Ruby, this is what my distortion Sparkle drive sound like without any amp pedal. And I think done pretty well. That's a pretty good tone, but now when we add it through an amp, it's going to change it again. That's the first setting of the Ruby. So the amp can tighten it up, just tighten it up a little bit and just change the tone. Here's the warm setting of the Dream that I've pulled up. That's very natural. And the second. This is definitely brighter. And then the Iridium. And we'll start with the Fender. And the Vox. Here's the Ruby. And that's the Vox. And here's the Iridium Vox. Sorry, I had to reset that to get the Vox again. Here's the Fender. And here's the Dream. Second setting. So that gives you a sense of when you try to go apples to apples with the Iridium Fender setting against the Dream and the Iridium chime setting, which is really the Vox, against the Ruby. You're really now comparing apples with apples instead of apples with oranges. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So which amp pedal do you like the most? Which one's yours? Let's just try it for fun. Let's add a little bit of fuzz. So here's my fuzz without any pedal. For fun, we'll add a little, that low sub octave. So the Iridium Fender setting. Iridium Vox setting. The Fender Dream, setting in the Dream, or the Dream. First setting. That's where having a bit of a brighter sound will help that cut through a bit. So that first setting of the Dream was better for the fuzz. Here's the Ruby. First setting. Second setting of the Ruby. That's almost breaking up too much, so we might want to pull back the fuzz a little bit. Wow, that's big. That is big. So for fun, let's just plug in the CANTINI and see what it sounds like through here with magnetic pickups. We'll do that next, and that's how we'll kind of end our video. I'm getting a sense of which one of these I like the best just by going through all these possibilities. You know, not one amp is really better than the rest. I think it really depends on what your own personal needs are. I can see real advantages in having the Iridium because then you've got different cab models that you can choose from. But then the Dream and the Ruby go into much more depth. The Dream really goes into a lot of depth with just truly modeling exactly that vintage tube Fender amp. And the Ruby really goes into a lot of depth in just capturing that vintage Vox sound of the AC30. So really, you know, really depends on what kind of music you're playing, what what your ear is telling you. So let's just fly through this one more time, just see how they react to a magnetic pickup. So we'll use my sparkle drive, a little bit of distortion, then we'll try the fuzz at the end. So this is the Fender mod. The Vox. The Dream, setting 1. Dream, setting 2. This is the warmer setting. box. Second setting. Let's try the MXR through all of these on the way back. So that's nothing. Here's with the Ruby. Really changes the tone. Here's without the amp. Here's with the amp. It changes a lot. So there you go. There's a little bit of the experimentation that I wanted to do with these pedals. Which one do you like the best? And which one do you think I'm going to choose? I've got an idea already which one I think is best suited for me. I'm going to continue to play around with these. Please comment below. Let me know your thoughts on these three amp pedals and how they have related to both these instruments and my chain of drive pedals. And let me know which one you would choose. Okay? I encourage you to like this video, ring the bell. For the big reveal of my favorite amp pedal, I'm going to do that in video 3. I'm going to take a couple more days just playing with these, but I think I know which one I'm going to end up keeping and adding to my rig. And I encourage you to watch video 3 where I reveal the pedal that I choose and why I've chosen it. You know, any one of these are great. I could really work with any of them, but I think one is sitting the best for me with my tone, my personal tone and my sound and my pedal board. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I wish you all the very best. Let's stay in touch. And again, a big shout out to the electric string community on Facebook. Encourage anybody watching, if you're an electric violinist or cellist, you're not on there, join. It's called Electric String Players, and it's a Facebook group, and you can just do a little search for that. We'd love to see you there. Okay, thanks again. Take care.